Hey YouTube, today we're going to be looking at a couple different types of revolvers, and before we get started I'm going to let you know that all these revolvers have been cleared, none of them are loaded, and we're clear to make this video. As I pick them up I will show you that they're not loaded. So what's the subject matter for today? Today we're going to compare double action revolvers here to single action revolvers, and we're going to tell you some of the uses of them, some of the advantages and disadvantages to each one of them. So what I have here in front of us is I have a full-size double-action revolver, I have a carry-size double-action revolver, I have a full-size single-action revolver, and a carry-size single-action revolver. And we're going to show you how each one of them operates and what are some of the tricks of the trade, some of the advantages and disadvantages to it. So what we're going to start off with is this single-action revolver, and I'm going to show you real quick that this thing is not loaded. And go through each cylinder, there's nothing in it. I checked it before we started filming and we're good. So what this is a Heritage Rouh Rider 22 caliber single action revolver, and this was modeled after the famous Colt model 1873, the gun that won the West. And this is probably one of the most iconic designs of all times, and I wish I had a real Colt to show you, but I do not. This is probably the most inexpensive firearm that I own, but it's a really good one to use as an example. Now, to this particular one, I have two cylinders. I have a 22 caliber long rifle and a 22 Magnum cylinder that goes in them, so I can shoot either one. The one that's in it right now happens to be the 22 Magnum cylinder. Now, what do you use this for? Well, in today's times, the only realistic thing to use this for would be for target shooting, and this thing can be a very accurate gun. A single action gun can be very accurate because when you pull back on this hammer and you fire it, it will not go off again. Every time you pull this back, you have to pull the hammer back to fire it. Now what that does for you when you're holding this gun, you can actually pick up your sight, be very precise what you want to do, and the trigger pull is not very hard to pull it back. But the problem is you have to do that every single time, but you're going to shoot a lot more accurate in single action than you will in double action. Now what are some of the disadvantages of this? Well, the disadvantage to a single action gun like this is the speed. You're not going to be able to make very fast follow-up shots when you do this, and one of the other advantages or disadvantages to it is when you unload this thing, you have to put this thing like in half cock, and you have to use this ejector thing every time. You'll see it comes out the other side. You have to do each cylinder one at a time, click it around to unload it. So it's an actual little process to reload the gun. So if you were using this for like a home defense or a carry weapon or something like that, it's not going to be very practical because you're going to only have however many rounds are in your cylinder, and then you got a while before you could reload. Now one of the other problems with this, and not this particular one because this is a rimfire gun and this is a more modern one, this one has a safety on it. So when you put this safety on and you actually engage the safety, this little bar comes out and keeps the hammer from actually engaging in the primer of the firearm or the firing pin. So you can sit there and fire this thing all day long and it's never going to hit anything. Now the old school ones, the big bore caliber ones like the Colts and some of these knockoff ones that they make today of the Colt, because they're all modeled after the Colt single action army. When you pulled back on this hammer, there would be a firing pin right here, and when you lowered this down, they didn't have this modern safety or anything like that on it. So the firing pin would actually rest on the primer of whatever shell was in that particular cylinder. And way back in the 1800s, there was a lot of problems. A lot of people shot their horses or shot themselves in the leg and stuff like that, because all it takes is something to bump into this hammer and this thing could easily go off. So the way they remedied that was majority of the people only carry or load these things with 5 rounds, and they let the hammer rest on the empty cylinder. So basically it reduces the capacity from 6 rounds to 5 rounds. So that's a big disadvantage. Fast follow-up shots is going to be a disadvantage, but one of the advantages is this thing's going to be extremely accurate because you're shooting single action every single time that you fire the gun. So every time you pull back on this hammer, you can really concentrate on your shot. Take a slow shot, take as much time as you need, and then when you cock it again, do the same thing, but you're not going to be doing anything very fast with it. So it's got some advantages and disadvantages. It's got a great trigger and everything because it's single action, but that's all you get in it. So you're going to lose your capacity. It's a little bit more dangerous, a little bit more unconventional, and it's a little bit more time consuming on reloads and all that. So what would I use this for? Mainly target shooting. When you're going out to a range, if you want to do single action cowboy hunt shooting or something like that, this is going to be a great gun to do that for. And any type of single action gun. It's mainly going to be a range gun. You're not going to really use it for home defense or anything like that. I wouldn't recommend it, at least, because there's a lot better options out there when it comes to revolvers and practicality, but we'll go through that here in a minute. The next one we're going to move to, now we got the big full-size target shooting out of the way in single action, is this North American Arms mini revolver. And I'm going to show you this one's not loaded here real quick. You have to actually remove the cylinder. There's nothing in it. Put the cylinder back in here, and you have to slide this pin in. Now, what is this good for? Well, this thing was mainly made to carry. This is a carry size single action revolver. And what this one particular one comes with is a folding grip. And that folding grip also acts as a holster. So if you look here, the main thing you put a gun in a holster for is to cover the triggers, to prevent accidental discharges. That's what that does, and it acts as a grip. When you open it up, it makes a full-size grip for this miniature revolver. When you have gorilla hands like I do, big old gorilla hands, you can still operate this revolver fine when you have this big old grip on it. Now, what are some advantages and disadvantages of this? Well, if you want to carry a really small revolver, I don't think you can run into anything much smaller than this. It's very easy to conceal. It's got this little clip on it that you can clip on your belt loop or your pants or inside your pocket. And it just looks like a pocket knife. But it's got a lot of disadvantages, folks. And I'm going to go ahead and tell you that I do not recommend anybody carrying this. I think this is one of the most dangerous firearms that I own, and it can be really easy to get yourself into a hot spot with this. So the way this thing operates is you push in on this, you pull this pin out, and you have to remove the cylinder to load it. And you load your 5 22 Magnum shells in it, and then you insert the cylinder back in, and you have to put your hand in front of the muzzle in order to stick this pin back in, and then the revolver becomes operational. Now, if you'll look on this, what I was mentioning earlier, this thing is a rimfire, but it actually has a firing pin on the hammer. And when you close this, you could be resting on the primer of the cartridge. So the way that North American Arms fixed that, if you'll notice on this cylinder here, between each 2 cylinders, there's a little ridge right here. So you have to actually pull this hammer back, pull the trigger, and rotate this cylinder until it gets between 2 of them, and that firing pin actually rests between 2 cylinders. See, it's locked and it's not sitting on a cylinder, so there's no way that this gun can go off right now, and that's the way you carry it. And then you close this up and you put it in your pocket. So when you're ready to deploy this, you got to open this up, and then you have to cock the hammer in order to fire it. And that's a little bit of a slow process, especially if you're in distress, and then you only have 5 rounds. And once those 5 rounds are up, you actually have to remove the cylinder, pull the cylinder out separately, and then you take this little pin here and you eject the shell. Actually, you do it through this side. You eject the shells out one at a time through here, and then you have to load 5 more in and stick the cylinder back in the gun, and that's a timely process. I think it's a little bit more timely than the single action full-size one there that I just showed you. But it's got its advantages and disadvantages, but I would not recommend a beginner even mess with one of these. They're a little dangerous, putting your hand in front of a muzzle of any gun, especially a loaded gun, which you almost have to do. When you load that cylinder, your finger has to go in front of this muzzle to stick this back in, and to sit there and monkey around to try and get this thing to rest between 2 cylinders. You have to do that with loaded cylinders, and it can be a little dangerous. So this thing's not going to be super accurate because of the small barrel size on it and everything. This is going to be a really up-close defense gun, but you could use it. This is your last resort. You'd rather be barely armed than not armed at all. So We've looked at a carry size single action, and we looked at a full size, like more like a range gun and single action. Now we're going to go into the double action. And what we have here is a Smith & Wesson 357 Magnum. This one happens to be a 586. And what double action is it works the same way that a single action does. You pull the hammer back and you pull the trigger and it goes off. But what you can also do is just pull the trigger every single time. But you got to keep in mind that when you pull the trigger on a double action revolver, the trigger pull is going to be a little bit heavier than when you just pull this hammer back and pull the trigger. So when you're shooting single action, just like with the ones that I just showed you, you're going to make very precise shots every single time. But if you wanted to, you could actually move this around trying to pull this trigger or pull this trigger back in double action, and it makes not quite as an accurate a shot. Now this particular one's had some action work done on it. This is an older from the 1980s 586, and this action is just super smooth, so it may not be too much of a problem on this particular gun, but it could be a problem with any other gun that has a heavier, action on it. But this one's more for target shooting. I think you'd have a little bit of an issue carrying this one because of the size and the weight of it. You can definitely use it as a duty gun, and people have many times, and I'm sure there are people out there that conceal carry stuff like this, but this is more of a target range gun, and you got the best of both worlds. And this particular one happens to have target sights on them, and they are adjustable for windage and elevation on it, so you can actually find out where your gun is printing and adjust the sight and adjust to where it's doing. The other two I just showed you, you cannot do that too. So I believe that this is the best of both worlds. You can shoot double action, you can do real fast follow-up shots with it, or you can do real slow precision single action shooting. See, that's my problem with these two, is they don't give you that option to be able to shoot double action really fast. And the other big advantages to it, when you swing the cylinder out, you just eject the new spent shells out, stick the new ones in, and close it. So it's a lot more faster process to reload on a double action revolver than it is a single action revolver. Now we're going to look at a carry one here, and this is a Smith & Wesson Model 60. And this one is also, you can pull back on this hammer, you can pull the trigger, or you can just pull the trigger all the way. Now this one's had absolutely no action work done to it. This is a great example of what I was just talking about. Now this gun can be used for carry because, as you can see, it fits in the palm of my hands, and it's not that much bigger than this one here for concealing purposes. But the advantage of this, when you draw it out, it's ready to go. You don't have to open it up, and you don't have to cock the hammer back. You just draw this thing out, aim in whatever direction you need to do, and pull the trigger, and it will start going boom. But if you were going to the range and you wanted to do more precise shot, you still have that option to do single action only. So it does both of them. Now the problem with this one is, if you're doing range shooting, it's got a real short barrel, and you're not going to have quite the accuracy that you have when you have this 4-inch one here. And the sights aren't going to be quite as nice because this has got thick sights on it. So you just have to figure out where your point of impact is. But with this one, it's had absolutely no action work done on it. So your double action here is a little bit harder to pull. I'm putting a little bit of effort into it. If you watch as I'm pulling it around, you can see the gun sort of moving a little bit, and that affects your accuracy. If you're trying to do target shooting at the range, see if you have any bullseyes you can hit in a row. So when you're at the target or at the range and you're trying to hit bullseyes, you're probably going to want to just cock this hammer back, acquire your target, hold it real slow, and just pull the trigger, and it's a lot lighter on it. So really, this is the best of both worlds when you're looking at shooting revolvers. So basically, folks, what I'm telling you is, I don't think that single action revolvers are bad in any way. I like them a lot. I mean, I wouldn't own any of them if I didn't like them. But really, when you're getting into the double action ones, I think you have the best of both worlds. Just technology is really caught up with these old girls here, and these are a lot more efficient. You can do the same things with these that you can do with these, but you cannot do the same things with these that you can do with these. So these are easier to load, easier to reload, easier to operate, and you have the option of shooting double action also as added to the single action on them. But I just want to show you different types of revolvers, what you could use in different situations, how triggers are affected on them, how reloading can be affected in them, and you make the decision on which one you want. I mean, I think that if you could only have one revolver out of this entire group, and that's the only firearm that you could have, honestly, I would probably pick this little Model 60 because I could use it as a concealed carry gun, and I could also go to the range and target shoot with it. Now, is it going to be as accurate as this one? It's absolutely not going to be, but it also, weighs a third of what this one does, and it's a third of the size of it. So it's very, very easy. Very easy choice if you could only pick one, but my recommendation is you get all of them. If you can pull it off, get them all, because you can't ever have too many firearms, right, folks? But anyway, folks, if you have any questions on any of these firearms, I'm pretty certain I got videos on each and every one of these where I just go into all the features and things on all of them. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'll be happy to answer to the best of my ability. Thank you very much for watching my video today, and you folks have a great day.